Hi, my name is Rob Skew. I've started this new YouTube channel, Still Shooting Black and White. I thought the best place to start would be with those photographers whose work I admire and have influenced my own work throughout my career. The 5 photographers I want to talk about are all portrait photographers. I'd also like to hear who your favorite portrait photographers are. These 5 photographers influenced my work starting way back in college. I've kind of got them in chronological order, not of when they shot, but when they were influential to me. The very first one is Arnold Newman. I was first introduced to Arnold Newman's work through his book, One Mind's Eye, while I was in college. I loved his existing light photography, his existing portraits. He was photographing artists, he was photographing poets, he was photographing writers, politicians, the people of influence of his age. He was doing it for Look magazine and Life magazine. I loved his work. I always loved his work. One Mind's Eye, I thought, was the greatest book of portraits out there. Now, he used existing light. I guess that's different than available light, because what lights are available is different than what lights are existing. But he shot with existing light and tried to capture something about the subject, reveal something about the subject through his composition, through the use of his light, something new to us that we could see and understand the artist, the poet, the writer a bit better. Great shots, classic shots of Stravinsky, Truman Capote, artists like Picasso, Georgia O'Keeffe. I love the work that he's done, and it really influenced me in those early years. And right out of college, I had a chance to go to New York, and I met with Arnold Newman, and he answered questions that I had about photography. He signed books for me. We kind of spent some time together one afternoon in his studio. Great photographer, was nice to me, very influential in my early work. I loved his work. I hope you like Arnold Newman too. Leave a comment if you do. The second photographer was the antagonist of Arnold Newman, really, and that was a Canadian photographer, Joseph Karsh. He went by Karsh. The two of them went toe-to-toe as the great portrait photographers of their generation. If one was shooting for Life magazine, the other one was shooting for Look magazine. Karsh also shooting like portraits, writers. The shot of Hemingway that he did is the classic Hemingway shot that we all kind of know. Karsh kind of was pushed onto the stage when he did a great portrait of Churchill. It's been shown around the world. It's been made into stamps. It's the classic Churchill shot. But he also did a lot with artists like Picasso, the writer Hemingway, as I said, and George Bernard Shaw. I'm not sure if George Bernard Shaw always looked like this, but this is how I remember him, and that's through one of Karsh's portraits. And this shot of Pablo Casals, people say they can hear the music playing. Now, I can't hear it, but that's what people say, so maybe they can hear it. And finally, later on in both of their careers, this shot of Jacques Cousteau, the great explorer. So Karsh, with his over-dramatic, over-lit portraits, many lights, he actually learned how to light at the Ottawa Little Theatre. And somewhat would say overlit, but certainly in the Karsh style. And I think that he was one of the photographers that you wanted to be photographed by. People loved his work and loved how they looked when they were Karshed. And great influence on me. I love his lighting, a lot of lights, overlit maybe, a lot of darkroom work, a lot of, I wouldn't say dodging and burning, but I would say farmer's reducer to bring some of those highlights out. So a lot of work by a great artist, Joseph Karsh. And if you like his books, there is a book, Karsh Portraits. That was one of his earlier ones, but he also did a 50-year retrospect, which is probably the one to get if you're going to buy one Karsh book. Get the 50-year retrospect. And just to sort of show how Karsh and Arnold Newman were head-to-head competitors, Karsh came out with his book called The 50-Year Retrospect, and Arnold Newman came out with his book called 5 Decades. So they were literally toe-to-toe for most of their career as photographers. And they really represented the two extremes in lighting. One overlit, totally lit, lots of lights, and Arnold Newman existing light, maybe no light, and just the opposite of what Karsh was doing. I actually had a chance to meet Karsh. I went for a job interview just towards the end of his career. He was still working at his studio at the hotel in Ottawa, and I met with him. My wife and I went with him. He was looking for some assistance. I didn't get the job, but I did get a chance to meet the great man, so that was fun. Now, as I kind of moved on in my career, I fell in love with the work of Richard Avedon. Now he's really a fashion photographer. He's the king of fashion. He worked for all the best magazines. He worked for all the best clients, all the best dress designers. Avedon was the man, and his fashion work is amazing. But the thing that I love about him is his portrait work. Totally different than the other two I've mentioned. He's generally white background. People say they kind of look like passport photos. It's just a guy standing there. But there was a rawness to it that I really loved. His book, In the American West, I thought it was brilliant. He traveled around for years going to carnivals, rodeos, festivals, fall fairs, all that type of thing, and photographing everybody, as I said, cowboys or beekeepers. He called them drifters. And he would put them on this white background, shoot it with 8x10, and the detail and the information that we can get from those photos is just spectacular. It's one of the great collections of photographs. If you're going to buy a book by Avedon, I like the one In the American West. It is a little bit expensive, but it is a true classic, and you really get to understand the beauty of his portraits. Now, different than Karsh, different than Newman, I'm not sure everybody was pleased with how they looked in the Avedon portraits. You looked like you look, and that was different, I think. Karsh made you beautiful in a sense, made you wonderful, but Avedon, that's what you look like, and a little bit maybe too real probably for a lot of us. Following Avedon's work is a photographer that I've known most of my career, but I didn't really understand her work until the Art Gallery of Ontario did a group show last year. Now, Bernice Abbott's work, I was familiar with it, the little boy with the grenade. I'd seen all that for all of my career. But at this group show, her work stood out. You just saw the depth of it. They had a much better understanding of her work. I really felt for most of my career, I missed Diane Arbus. And I think she's got a following for sure, but underrated. What do you think? What do you think of her work? She did a lot that she would call them weird and wonderful. So the tattoo man at the carnival, even the boy with the grenade. A lot of carnival people, debutantes in their bedrooms, a lot of work with twins. I just thought she really got under the skin and under the covers of people and really photographed them in a truer sense. Again, she died young. I don't think she really became the superstar that she was. And as I said, I was familiar with her work, but really didn't love it until I saw this show last year at the Art Gallery of Ontario. If I was buying one of her books, I don't know, maybe that Aperture book, the 40th anniversary edition, that would be a great one to get. You'd be able to see a lot of her work there. Not as much about her, but again, Diane Arbus, not as mainstream. She was shooting fringe people before it was popular to shoot fringe people. She basically started the fringe photography movement, if there is such a thing. But I love her work now. I didn't love it as much in the past, but I do love it now. The final photographer that I want to talk about, who I feel has influenced me and a lot of photographers, again, a fashion guy, is Irvin Penn. I did get to catch one of his shows maybe 2 or 3 years ago in New York City. But he was a fashion guy. He was, again, where if Avedon wasn't doing it, Irvin Penn was doing it. And they worked for all the best publications and all the best designers. But his portraits, he really took this curtain, it was like a theater curtain, and used it as a background for years. And he traveled around the world with this one background, kind of like it's a simplistic kind of way to shoot, but one background, a rollie, which just has a fixed lens. I don't know if he brought lights or not. He basically brought a little room and he created a studio wherever he went. So this would be like from the book Worlds in a Small Room. And he did great portraits of New Guinea tribesmen and Moroccan people, basically people at the market, people on the street. He brought them into this controlled studio and did black and white portraits of them. And they stand up today as some of the great portraits of all time. He's got, stuff on bikers. He brought bikers into this background. He brought normal people. And he created a collection of great black and white portraits on this one background. And I think it really inspired me for sure. Maybe it inspired you, let me know. But it inspired, I think, a group of photographers who went on to shoot with the canvas background, one light, William Coupon, photographers like that. You see their work a lot. It did in the past. And, great magazine covers by all these guys, canvas background. But it was really Irvin Penn, I think, that brought that to the next level. So that his work I've always admired, and I believe even today he probably had the most influence on the portrait work that I do. Now, what do you think? Leave a comment. Who are your favorite portrait photographers? Again, this is about black and white. These photographers shot in color and in black and white, but for the most part, I'm looking at their black and white images. Leave a comment, hit subscribe, and thanks for joining my new YouTube channel.